Hi guys, welcome back to the Big Sew Along. I'm Ginny and today we are going to have part 3 of our Diane Ericson, let me fix my top here, my Diane Ericson O'Keefe Sew Along. So a couple of things. First, the tutorial today is a little bit longer, so I'm going to try to keep the chit chat to a minimum. We'll see how I do. First, I just want to say, like, I'm sure everybody is aware, there's a huge hurricane hitting the United States today, like overnight in Florida, and then I think it's heading up the East Coast all the way to Canada. So first and foremost, I just want to say to anybody in the line of this hurricane, I hope you guys are all safe and out of its way, and I'm thinking of you all. Secondly, what do I have to say about this? So today you'll be seeing me, I can't remember which fabric I was working in my tutorial last week, but this week I'm going to be working with the black and white polka dot from Sevenberry. You'll see some big splotches on it. I pre-washed all my fabric and this one bled a little bit. It doesn't really bother me. I actually kind of like the way it looks, but you know, just be aware of that. If you buy this fabric and you are washing it, wash it in cold water, which I did not. I don't think I washed it in hot water, but I probably washed it in regular, so like warm water or something. So if you have this fabric, and especially if you're getting it in the black colorway, I think it does come in other colorways, but anyways, wash it in cold water. The other thing is, I thought I had a fair amount of this fabric. It turns out I had 3.5 yards, which was enough to make this jacket. Mine is actually going to be a coat, but it's plenty to make this. However, it wasn't enough for me to match up my dots, so I just ignored it and cut it out, and it is what it is. Sometimes that's the way it goes. Anyways, so far I'm pretty happy with the way it's looking. I did disassemble part of it and make the back smaller, less voluminous. I followed the directions that Diane has in her pattern for doing that, and so now I'm going to put it all back together today. I'm really happy with that. The reason I did that was because this fabric is pretty stiff, and that volume just stuck out. It didn't drape very well like it does in the shirt version I'm doing. So yeah, so I'm really happy with that so far. We'll see. The other thing is, last week I told you guys that the AO version of this pattern was missing pattern piece number 1, which is the front piece. I did get a message from Diane's assistant last week, or earlier this week I guess, telling me that she had fixed that, and you guys, whoever's already purchased this pattern as a PDF, you should be getting an update sometime very soon with the front piece included on the AO version. So just keep your eyes out for that, and make sure it doesn't get like shot to your spam or something like that. I think that's it today, you guys. Let's get started with our tutorial, and then I'll be back. The first thing we're going to work on today is our shawl collar, and it looks like this. It's actually a piece that looks like this. Let me grab the pattern piece for that. This is what the pattern piece looks like, and it's cut on a double fold. So you're going to fold your fabric over this way and then fold it again this way, and then that's how you're going to cut your pattern piece out. I chose to make notches on mine for the shoulder marks just because my my marker is a heat erase, so it just keeps getting erased. Anyways, okay, so the first thing we're going to do is interface this. My fabric is pretty heavy, so I have just interfaced 1/2 of mine. The instructions do tell you to interface the whole thing. So if you have a lighter weight fabric, go ahead and do that. Then the next thing we're going to do is sort of steam press this. Now she says to steam shape it, which means you're going to go to the iron and just try to give it a little curve so it curves like this. Now the thing is, I don't want to stretch out my edge too much when I do that, because I want to be sure it's still going to fit in my neck space. But let's see if we can show it a little bit here. You can use like a rounded, a curved object like your ham, but I'm not sure I'm getting much of a result that way, to be honest with you. I guess like that. There we go. I need an extra hand. I think that's actually going to be fine. You can see that it's starting to curve a little bit. So it's going to fit like that. I think that's going to be just fine. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to base this edge, and then we're going to finish this raw edge, and I'm going to finish mine with a serger. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is our pockets. And you can see I have 4 pieces. They all look like this, and they have all been finished on all edges. And we're just going to start with our back piece, which looks like this. I'm going to put it right side up. And I am going to match, these are the marks right here, the dots on my pocket piece. And on my jacket piece, my body piece, I made little slashes. So I'm just going to match those up. That's going to go there. And that is going to go there. And then we're going to do that on this side. Right there. Now with my pockets, I like to stitch them just a little bit shy of our seam allowance. On this one, our seam allowance is 1/2 inch. So I'm going to sew my pockets on from top to bottom with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to press those seam allowances towards the pocket. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on the front and the back. Alright, so our pockets are sewn on. This is our back piece. And this is the front, both of the fronts. I don't know if you can see this. I understitched the pockets on my front pieces only so that they don't pop out this way, but you don't want to do it on the back because you want those to be able to move forward. Okay, so now we have done our collar, we've done our pockets. We're going to put all of these pieces aside for a minute. And we're going to go back to our sleeves. This is the sleeve with a cuff, but without the contrast cuff that I did the other day. This will just be the regular cuff. So this is what our pocket looks like. And I'm sorry, pocket. Our sleeve looks like. And you can see I have finished this raw edge at the bottom of the cuff. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to fold this back. There is a line on your pattern that's a fold line. I marked mine with a little notch, which is right here. And I have a little dot right there, which is my marker. And I have that same thing on this side. So on this one, we're just going to sew these short sides closed. Before I forget, if you're putting the dart in, do that first and then do this. And do this cuff to both sleeves. Okay, so you can see I've sewn those down and I've gone ahead and clipped my corners. And I've also pressed those edges open, or those seams open. And now we're just going to turn our cuff to the right side. Actually, it's to the wrong side, but we'll turn it right side out. Like that. Now, you can sew this down any way you like. I am going to put a snip right in here at the top of my cuff. I hope you guys can see that. I'm going to snip, just snipping the seam allowance for my sleeve part. I'm snipping it upwards towards the top of the sleeve, and I'm going to do that on both sides. I think. There we go. Like that. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give that a good press. You can see that once you snip those, you can kind of get these to pull out a little bit. Like that. I'm going to go ahead and press this, and I'm going to just stitch mine by machine. But you can, you know, finish that edge and stitch it any way you like. Okay, that's our cuff done. Stitched down. Now we're going to put this right sides together, and we're going to stitch it together down the center seam here, the center sleeve seam. So when you come down here to this edge, you're going to want to be sure you start right at the very edge of your cuff so you don't get a hole there. So start right there. And then just go all the way across the seam, and then you're just going to want to finish that and press it. Okay, so here our sleeves are finished. Now, just a couple of things. Sewing these cuffs and sleeve seam this way is a lot easier than the way I did it last time. However, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this in here. Actually, I'll turn this inside out. I am not a big fan of having serging like this, and you have this like little... This is that little tail we cut. So you could just snip that off. But what I don't like is just seeing a raw edge here, period. So what I am going to do is I'm just going to fold that tip under like that and press it really flat. And then I'm just going to do a quick little hand stitch right here to hold that seam allowance down. And that'll keep it from showing through on the other side, I think. So when you fold it back, it'll look like that, and you won't be seeing a raw edge anywhere. Okay, so the only other thing I did to these cuffs or to these sleeves is I did, since I was already at the machine with them, I ran one basting stitch around the arm, and it's not all the way around, it's like probably 3/4 of the way. We're going to inset these sleeves in a little bit, so I figured I would just go ahead and put that gather stitch or that ease stitch in there now, so I don't have to go back and do it later. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to put our fronts and backs together, and that is pretty standard. We're going to sew our shoulder seams together. Make sure, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. Sometimes I get out of frame there. This little point here on your collar is going to peek out past the other side. So make sure your seams are meeting, your pieces are meeting at your 1/2 inch mark. So your pieces need to meet here. Yeah, here. Not on the edge, okay? All right, so that's the shoulder seam. And then for our pocket, our side seams, she does this differently. She just, in the instructions they have you do the shoulder seam and then the collar and the facing. For me, it's easier to do it this way, so this is the way we're going to do it today. We're going to put these together like this. So to sew our side seam, I'm just going to put my paper pattern back down here, and I have a pin right here at this dot. This dot down here is the end of our pocket. This one is where we want to stop sewing. So put a pin here or some sort of a mark there, and one at this mark right here. This is your hand opening, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start at this edge, and we're gonna sew down to this pin right here, and we're gonna back tack there. And remember, we sewed this pocket in at 3/8 of an inch, so when you sew this side seam, it's gonna come just outside of this stitching line here, which is what we want, okay? So back tack there. Then we're gonna start here and do the exact same thing, back tack and sew down to the mark on your pattern, which on mine is right about here. And then back tack again. Then you're gonna go back up to the top, and you're just gonna sew the pocket shut. So you're gonna sew with your 1/2 inch seam allowance, start right here where your seam will be, and sew all the way around your pocket to here, and then just back tack right here on the seam allowance too. Okay, so this is our jacket, our shirt, or whatever we're making. This shoulder seam here, we're going to want to press to the back, like that. The side seams, we're going to want to press to the back, but we want to press our pocket to the front. So we're going to put a little clip here at the top of our pocket, just right here, just in the seam allowance. And then here at the bottom, same thing. And that's going to allow us to press this pocket to the front and the seam allowances to the back. Or you can press the seam allowances open also if you prefer. Okay, once we have that done, you can leave the pocket as is, which is going to be loose like this. Or the way they instruct you in the directions is to lay it flat like this. Give it a good press first. Make sure that everything is where it needs to be. And then just do an edge stitch around your pocket like this. Can you see that? I'm still having trouble getting my stuff centered on this camera. Anyway, we're going to go all the way around. Just if you're going to sew your pocket down, just be sure you do it nice and neatly, because the stitching, you're stitching it to the front of the garment. So you're going to want it to be really nice and neat. So the stitching that shows on the right side looks good. Okay? I don't know if you can see my pins there, like that. Okay, so then the next thing we're going to do is our sleeve. Okay, for our sleeve, we're going to start by, I think originally I said I did not put my ease stitch all the way around, but in this sleeve it actually has a fair amount of ease. So I went back and did my ease stitch exactly on my seam allowance, so 1/2 inch, and I went pretty much right up to the underarm seam on both sides. So now I'm just going to pull one end of my ease stitching up a little bit. So you can see the edge of my sleeve starts to curl a little bit. That's what we want. Not too much. We don't want gathers. We just want a little curl on the edge. And then I'm going to go to this side and do the same thing. And then let's see if we can get this guy in here. This is the back of my sleeve, the one with double notches. So this way. Let's go this one. We're going to match that underarm seam with the side seam of your garment, and I'm going to pin it pretty much right at that seam allowance, so right where my basting stitch is. And then I'm going to flip it around here, and I'm going to match that little notch at the top, which is my shoulder seam. I'm going to match that right there with the shoulder seam. And then we're just going to go around, easing that in as we go. And if we have that basting stitch right at our seam allowance, it's easy to make sure you're not getting any puckers below that. You're going to get some wrinkling above that in the seam allowance, but you don't want it down here like that. So that looks like it's going to fit in pretty well. Okay, once you get that all eased in like that, we're going to go to the sewing machine and sew that in. And we're going to sew right on top of our E-stitch. And which will make it harder to take the E-stitch out if you need to, but it does make it a lot easier to make sure you don't get any puckers in your sleeve. I'm also going to sew it this way so that the sleeve is facing up. That way I can see as I come to it if I'm getting any puckers in it, and I can work those out as I go. Then we're just going to finish this armhole however you like. I'm going to use the serger on mine. Alright guys, so that's our tutorial for today. Next week we'll be back to finish this up. We'll be doing our collars, our facings, and our hem. And I think that will be it. Until then, as always, I thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate that you guys choose to spend a little time with me every week. I also really appreciate all of the likes, subscribes, and comments that you guys leave. I really do. So that's it for this week. Until next week, happy sewing!